So, on this overcast evening or morning in the Chicagoland area, I'm going down Route 53, which leads into 290, and 290 enters the backside of the city of Chicago, comes in on the south side of the city of Chicago. So this is a way to, if you're going to enter the south side with logistics, you would move down this corridor with semis. So these logistical parks, even Elk Grove, would move on 53, and 53 to the far south side into Indiana with logistics. So I'm saying this is a very good trucking corridor, and not necessarily 18 wheels. I'm talking 10 wheelers. That means, 4 in the back, 4 in the middle, and 2 in the front. 10 wheeler trucks. So not 18 wheelers, but good for 18 wheelers as well, but 10 wheeler trucks. UPS uses a lot of 10 wheel trucks, so does FedEx. They use a lot of 10 wheel trucks, and they also use a lot of 6 wheel trucks. 4 in the back, 2 in the front. So they have a huge fleet of 6 wheel and 10 wheel trucks. Huge fleets of them. And it's a great corridor for them to bypass the whole north side, not having to go anywhere near it, and using this 53 to 290 to go into Indiana, as I say, or the far south side of Chicago, or working the back side of Chicago, like on the far south side of the city, like where Museum Park is and that. It's better to go around than it is to enter in through going 90 downtown. So I guess today I'll take the long way around. But right here, Palatine Road and all this, Arlington Heights is the perfect place for the future of the Chicago Bears. Why? The average income in the suburbs is substantially higher than in the city of Chicago. Substantially higher. And you have access to 3 times as many people. 9 million to 10 million people live in the suburbs surrounding the city, and 3 million in the city. And then once you enter the city, once you're in Arlington Heights, you have Schaumburg, which is the number 1 economic pocket outside of the city of Chicago in the state of Illinois. And then the number 2 economic pocket, which is not that far away, is Naperville. And Naperville ranks as the best city to live in America, and it's been that way for decades now. And it is an example for the state of Illinois, but it ranks as the best city to live in the United States, and one of the best cities to live in the world, Naperville. It is perennial number 1 in the United States as best cities to live in. Here's a Chicago Bears sign, and you can't really see it, but they have it right there, and it says Chicago Bears. So promoting, and here is Harvest, which I was part of Harvest Church. And so the church can get involved in the Chicago Bears Stadium. And so, again, moving it here, and let's get back to Naperville. Naperville is the number 1 city in the United States and fights to be one of the best places to live in the world. And it's a great example for Illinois to build off of. But there are other great cities within Illinois that have nothing to do with Chicago. And Chicago really needs to reinvent itself. But again, the Chicago Bears moving to Arlington Heights is the best bet. Because what happens? The Chicago Bears is 75%, the NFL is 75% minority. But they generate the majority of its fan base from white people. And so they have a substantial desire to move in this way, I should say, beneficial to create diversification. Because its player base is 75% minority, and you're talking about integration and respecting each other. Well, a large white fan base respecting minority athletes, which I've seen all over the North Shore, from Michael Jordan to Big Cat Williams, that was part of the Chicago Bears, and many others that lived on the North Shore, from Scottie Pippen. Last time I saw Scottie Pippen was at Northbrook Court on a date with his girlfriend, who I think might have been Hispanic. But anyways, he was there on Christmas night. And this is, I don't know, 2014 maybe? Something back then. And he was there on Christmas night. I used to go with the kids late night to a movie on Christmas night, a 10 o'clock movie. After all day Christmas, we catch a late night movie, and it was little Larry and Jessica and all the kids, and then we buy the big popcorn with the refills, and truly, and then we split the cups. We get the little smaller cups, ask for a couple of those, we buy the one big soda. They can charge us for each of the additional cups. But we split the big soda, get the refill on the big soda, and it's a family pack. And the reason why I say that is because you don't want to spread disease. So, again, you get the big thing, and then you just subdivide it. I mean, they could offer substantial, but the whole point was getting the refills. Because we went through the popcorn and we went through the sodas. But I'm big on intermission. If you're going to offer refills, and this is why I don't understand in theatrical plays why they can't sell food like popcorn and beverages to watch the opera or anything else to raise the revenue that they generate. Or you can have a glass of wine or something else while you watch the opera. The speaker systems and everything else should be immersed and done correctly, where the sounds of people eating don't affect the delivery of the sounds from the stage. So they have to do theaters, the opera and all that, not only on the layout, but also integrate proper acoustical speakers. And yes, even in theater and opera, subwoofers, so they can feel vibrations in that. So as they integrate movie theaters, they also have to integrate theatrical theaters. And yes, you can integrate it into the new football stadium subwoofers. So when the contact is made on the field, the subwoofer would get feedbacks from the pressure sensors in the pads, and project that out in the subwoofer through a vibration in that, not substantial, but so they can feel a little bit of the impact. So movie theaters are doing it now. Well, so should sporting stadiums and theatrical plays and the opera, to integrate a little bit more of a sensory, and then putting out smells, like having smell sensors like they do at the Alien Adventures in Disney. They have the water, when it breathes, it sprinkles you with a little water. But anyways, it also has mist, and it also has scenting. And so they can put out these scenting things and mixers where it created it, where it can make all these different scents through mixing a few different chemicals, and the units can be put in so they can smell what it smells like in a city, say in Old England. Not too strong, but they can smell what it smells like when it's by the waterfront. Marlon Brando in his movie with his theatrical, Stella, anyways, I think Tennessee Williams, and it's on the waterfront. But they can smell the sea breeze. So they need to integrate that into the opera and theatrical plays, and now into theaters and concerts. Truly, it has to be a much more immersive experience. They have to compete with VR headsets and everything else, and they don't want to lose, so now they have to do this more immersive experience. And I put this out there decades ago, and they have to do this to integrate, to keep up, or they're going to lose. And theaters learned it, that people are getting these great at-home theaters. They have to be way beyond what you can experience at home. The reality of the theaters, the movie theaters in it, you have to create these experiences that are better than they can duplicate at home. You have to continuously outdo them. And yes, it's keeping up with the Joneses. But you have to surpass the Joneses. Keep your margin. So the experience is, this great immersive experience when you go to the theater, to the movie, to the sporting event. And they really do, because they're pushing the edge of at-home and entertainment. Well, they keep all these venues viable, from opera houses to the theater to concerts and everything else. They have to surpass what you can get at home in an experience. And that's what I talk about exclusive merchandising. You actually have to go to the concert or the theater, and they have official merchandise that you can only purchase at the game. So you're playing the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, you buy official gear that you can only buy, and it's only sold during that game, and that's it. So you have to attend to get these things. And I gave the Hard Rock and its restaurants as an example. You can only get the Chicago t-shirt for the Hard Rock Cafe at the Chicago Hard Rock or the Los Angeles Hard Rock. You can buy a general Hard Rock, but not the official. You have to actually go to the cafe. And they could have done one better, where you had to buy a minimum of food and beverage. So their food and beverage outlets got money, instead of people just waiting in the t-shirt line, getting a t-shirt and leaving. They would have to go through the restaurant, make a minimum purchase, $10 or $20, to be eligible to purchase a t-shirt. So giving them that, and then you can give them reward points and so on as a thank you. So, but they have to do these things to get butts in the seat and get people out of the house. They're competing. Unless I watched the Eden's Theater go away, I watched many theaters in Chicago disappear. And they disappeared because they're not willing to compete. And if you don't compete, then you disappear. And they forgot they have to maintain their edge. So, speaking of this, but again, the Bears going into Arlington Heights is much better, because if they go into Gary and that, in Indiana, they're moving into a much more black population and all that, and they're moving deeper into the minority, and they're losing diversification, and they're making the game more all minority, both fan and players. So again, that's why I like Tiger Woods coming in the golf and that. There's Aaron Jackson. Well, if you're a good sprinter, black people might be good at speed skating. You don't give anything away, but you say you have possibilities to compete. And no, they don't ever have to succeed, meaning you don't give anything away. If they win, they win. If they don't, they don't. But the whole point is they can participate, and it gives them a different type of experience and a different type of skill set, which leads into different muscle and brain coordination and so on, and gives them a different vantage point. Yes, the different types of sports you do, whether you play chess or checkers or marbles or you speed skate or roller skate, and those open up pathways to creativity, to thinking, to solving problems. So it's just not motor skills. It opens up different pathways to look at different problem solving. It gives you different problem solving skill sets because you pull from a greater arsenal of experiences. And so one way you might have solved the problem in football, but you might have solved the problem differently in basketball or baseball or wrestling or whatever. So it broadens your skill set. So even if they don't achieve at the highest of levels, they still opened up their neural pathways. They become better problem solvers to be able to cope and adapt to different situations in life better. So I believe everybody earning it. I believe nothing is given. You go out there and you compete. Youth baseball, the skill sets are very low, so the barriers of entry are very low at T-ball and many others, and they are. But as you grow, the competition gets more fierce, and there's a weeding out process, and it gets thinner and thinner. But I still don't believe you give somebody something, because they can participate heavily at the lower levels. Like, do you know football? The majority of football is played by white people. Overwhelming majority, but there's a weeding out, and those white people also willingly take different career paths. Truly, they only want to go so far with their athletic path, and they move into different areas, but that gives them a great skill set and allows them to achieve in other areas. So the majority of white people move into other areas, but the majority of all football is played by white children. Overwhelming. But the majority of professional football is played by minorities because they have a more focal point. So again, you see how these things, and you understand how they play and how they integrate. So the Bears opening up on the North Shore would open up Milwaukee. Milwaukee's a little over an hour. So that means they get Racine and many other areas in Milwaukee. They get all the stuff in Elgin and downstate that otherwise wouldn't, even with high-speed rail, still less likely. So moving them to Arlington Heights moves them into a greater wealth base where the average income's almost $200,000 from the city, where the average income in the city is about 100 and something, just over 100. And then in Indiana, it's under 100. So why would they want to be moving where the fan base has less disposable income, less income in general? It's not going to drive more revenue for the stadium, that's for sure. You're going to do it as a loss leader. And so, again, it doesn't make sense. So opening in Arlington Heights is truly their only choice. It is way better than staying in Chicago on the lakefront. They open themselves to 3 times as many fans, actually almost 4 times as many fans. Yeah, trucks should have to pay for retread, and when they go into the scales, they look at the tires. Oh, they have to inspect the tires, lost retread, and they have to fine them. Because when they go through the scales and the truck and state troopers do independent inspections, if they lost tread on the tire, they get fined. Because they wore the tire down too far and it lost the retread. And I came out with whole ways of, making them integrate it better. But still, they have to fine the trucking company for the road hazard and the cleanup. So they have to inspect their tires when they pull into the truck scales, or the state troopers, and every state should be pulling over and inspecting. If you looked how the Sinaloa cartel used Chicago's rail and trucking as a rail, trucking, and air transportation, and I would assume they use barge transportation as well, use the shipping channels to make it an incredible distribution point to spread narcotics everywhere. So again, every state needs to have those units, and they pull the trucks over. And trucks know when they're doing interstate, they're going to get 1 or 2 random inspections minimum. And that scares the bejesus out of them. But do you know what it does to the trucker? He literally has this excuse through law enforcement to refuse giving in, because I'll be busted. Your load will never make it through. They do numerous random inspections. I can't beat the system. So there's no use in threatening me or anything else, because the stuff won't get through. I'll end up in jail and your load will be confiscated. So it gives them the higher authority, as Dawson, one of the greatest negotiators, says. You got to give them the out card, the higher authority, and it can't be a lie. It has to be the God-given truth. Because if not, then it jeopardizes the trucker's life. It jeopardizes the pilot's life. It jeopardizes the flight attendant's life. Where leveraging them doesn't work. The plot will get busted, and those people will go to jail, and then it'll go all the way back to them. Because they get me, they get you. So you got to give them get out of jail cards, that if they do get in these situations, that they have legitimate excuses and can tell them God's honest truth, that I can't do this for you, and I can take you through. They do these random checks, and I don't know if they're using dogs or robots or scanning or imaging, because they change it up and they might use all of them. So I have no idea how to position anything to make it work, because they move things around and I have no idea how they're coming at me. And I'll get checked at least once, more than likely twice, depending on how many states I go through. So doing your shit is just not a possibility. So leveraging me is not a good idea. It just lends to backlash to you. You'll have to find another way. I'm not the way. So you have to give them plausible deniability, true deniability, saying it just doesn't freaking work. And this is why giving them hostages and everything, when they take it and force people to do things like in Dune, well, the whole point is it can't work. So their children have to go to school. Their wife has to show up for work or PTA meetings. So people notice these things. That's why you have the accountability groups in church. And so people don't go for long periods of time not noticed. And so his wife being captured, they would have known that she's not with him. She's missing. And so there's no way you can use my wife as leverage. Because they will notice. And putting under duress doesn't work either. Because on the back end, they notice that even if you end up offing us, that they'll notice on the back end they used us. So that's just clues into getting you. And so, that's why I push the envelopes of forensics and everything. I want people to have get out of jail cards from terrorists and everything, where they can tell them the God honest thing. And that's why I like the landman in the opening. What does he tell them? He says, you can kill me, but what will happen in the ramification is they will send in special forces units. They'll come down here, weed you out, put bullets through your head, go back to your operation point, put a missile in it, destroy it, and destroy everybody in the food chain. So you could go the way of not signing the contract and offing me, but the ramifications is unbelievable cost on your side. So you might get one of me, but they'll get 10-to-1 ratio, 100-to-1 ratio. So every one of me, we get 100 or 1,000 of you. And if you read what I haven't published yet, but on Vietnam, how did North Vietnam do it? What did they do? And it points it out. They kept incredibly high birth rates. When the war started in Vietnam in the 40s and that, so they didn't run out of soldiers, they implemented rations and health care so they could produce a high rate of fertility. Even with extreme losses, they still had enough soldiers. They weren't getting help from the Russians, but advisory. They had to put their own lives at risk. Unlike in Korea, they got almost 4 million regular Chinese army. Millions and millions of Red Chinese regular army. Not volunteer. It was their fully trained, highly equipped regulars with their tank and air and all kinds of support. We were fighting China. That was an official war with China. The Korean War was really a war between the United States and China. North Korea was a puppet. It was really between the United States and China. And it was a full-on engagement. But again, that was a police action. And we had the Turks and everybody else. So we had a coalition of forces. So, totally different. So you have to understand how things truly are. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord, so I can truly understand it. Not how you want to lie about it, but how the rubber truly hits the road. And this is why God laughs when you make plans, because God knows how the rubber truly hits the road. The only one you're fooling is fooling yourself, thinking he's some kind of sucker. You're the sucker for Satan and the demonics, thinking he's some type of sucker. They tried to play him for a sucker, and that's why it's in the Bible, as Satan rallied his legions, and they were all put to waste. God just waited. He let them make their final choice, and once they went into conflict, he killed them all. Wiped them all out immediately. It wasn't a long prorated war like they say. It was immediate annihilation. But he let them free will. He shows that. He let them choose. And when they made the wrong choice, he ended them all. That's the point of Revelation. It says the same thing. And it tells you those that side with God win now and eternally. Those that side against God will eventually lose here and lose eternally. It's already baked in. He's just waiting to see what team you're on. And there is no fence sitters. So either you're on a team that's going to be annihilated or you're going to be on the winning team. But that's your choice. But getting back to it, outside the city, Schaumburg and Naperville are the two largest economic pockets outside the city of Chicago. And there are extremely huge economic pockets. And do you know the city of Chicago can do great commerce with Schaumburg and Naperville, just as an example? It's beneficial to them and beneficial for them to do commerce with the city. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. So again, there are reasons why expanding capabilities, basically. So you're making trade-offs. We're in the Austin community. Do you know how much money I pumped into the Austin community? Which my partner David and Sue I, his wife, were in the Austin community before I was. They pumped they spent a lot of time trying to build the Austin community. What's the Austin community? Primarily all blacks. Primarily with Latinos. And who was I doing it with? Before I ever met David and his wife. And Suai comes from Malaysia. She's Malaysian Chinese, and she grew up in the ghettos there. David is third generation Japanese in America. He's American Japanese. His parents came over way before World War II. Or his great-grandparents. Yeah, his great-grandparents, I think. But anyways, yeah, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents. So it would be him, parents, grandparents, his grandparents. So anyways, they tried. And David didn't do any business with the black community. David's bank and bank consulting and everything, he didn't do any business with the black community, neither did Suai. They did it purely altruistically. And so I didn't do any. Austin is one community, literally in my financial planning business, I didn't have any clients from. I did it purely for decades, altruistically. And it's right on Cicero, and I've done a lot for Cicero. And that has a mixture of whites, Hispanics, and blacks. And it has a very large Hispanic population. But as I point these things out, if I was Hispanic and black leadership and Samoan leadership in the United States, I know I have major issues that I need to deal with within my community. And then they can look at what they did with the white community, how they destroyed white gangs, white criminal organizations, and so on and so forth, and how they dismantled them, one way in the RICO Act and many others. But we also, once the dismantling starts happening, you don't want the knock-on effect again. You don't want to create another nightmare. The nightmare never ends, it just moves. The point is trying to minimize and shrink the nightmare. That's not what happened. You had a little nightmare in the Russian mob, the Italian and white street gangs, and they departed and brought in a much bigger nightmare. It didn't get better, it got exponentially worse, because who moved my cheese? They didn't watch it moved, and those people learned from the organizations they watched as all these white organizations went under, they got smarter and they set up different structures and they isolated themselves. Like the Samoan gangs, they use a cultural and gang, and then they use affiliation because they don't have enough scale to give them greater protection. So they learned how to make their organizations much more, cemented. So you have to literally grow up in the bloodline. They know you from birth all the way through. So they know who you are. And they use those people as a way of protecting themselves. They integrate that way. As the scumbag tailgates me in the Jeep, I would put a bullet through his head. Or her head. I don't give a shit. They're fucking pieces of garbage. As God would kill them immediately. And you think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. It's a zero tolerance fucking policy. Do you go up there and threaten the pastor? I'm saying before. Or are you going to be like a Muslim organization that goes up there in France, goes up to there, puts the pastor on the knee and cuts off their head? Are you going to tolerate that? Or are you going to have a zero tolerance, and even if they come near, it's the end of them? Because the threat that they might do the other, which they did in France, you can't have that threat. So the essence of proximity does matter. And too close could be your death. So there's a buffer zone, a natural buffer or safety zone. And it doesn't matter where you go. There's this natural buffer. When I went into Ghana, there was a natural buffer. And it was interesting. It was like parting the Red Sea. Wherever I walked, people walked right and left. They just got out of my way naturally. And I asked, I said, in the open market, I move around, I could walk up and talk to the vendors. But they naturally just moved away from me. When I went to the internet cafe, they cleared out, moved seats, positioned me. It was like parting the Red Sea. And I said, why is that? Because they know if anything happens to you, they're fucked. And so the best thing not to be charged with a crime of responsibility is to keep a nice safe distance from you. So they can't be charged with potentially doing something negative to you, which could cost them the life, which we would be happy to off them. So that's why it's like walking the Red Sea. It will immediately part. They just move out of your way. But I had to ask the question because I was all by myself. I went all over the place, lots of it all by myself. And there was this natural buffer zone in the whole country. No one wanted to be responsible for any harm that came to me. Because that means they could go under. A zero tolerance. So they moved away and they approached with caution. That's what they do in Japan, if you understand that. They don't do any large hand movements or subtle gestures or be boisterous. They approach you very subtle. Why? Anything more is considered threatening. So you get black people here, and what they do would be considered highly threatening in Japan. And people will complain about them, and they will go to jail. being respectful and subtle and having charisma is very important. You don't fit in, you're going to have an extremely difficult life. My friends, white, Asian, white, Hispanic, and others, they learned. And they move very gently. My friend Mark talked about the first time he was in the subway in Tokyo, and he's about 5'10", 5'11". And he said, I could see over most everybody. And he said, first time I ever been in a subway where I could see almost over every single person in the subway. But he said everybody moved orderly and respectfully. And he told me about no one jaywalks. And he said, I'm standing at a light and I'm just observing and following, not being the rude American, observing and following. He ended up living in Tokyo for a while as well. And he said, there's no traffic in either direction. And they just wait for the walk sign. No cars, no nothing. Truly. No movement, and they wait for the light to change. And once it changes, they walk. Even when there's no one looking, they follow the rules. He lived in a communal bathroom. His room in Tokyo, he shared with another roommate. I think he was Caucasian too. And when he opened the door, they couldn't open it fully, which is not good for fire emergencies. But when they opened the door, he could open it about 50%, and then he had to step over his roommate to get to his bed. It was a 2-bedroom, not 2 separate bedrooms. It was just one room with 2 beds, and it was like 200 square feet. It was incredibly small. And he said that, he said that the bathrooms and everything, he had to go to the communal showers, and the communal bathrooms were impeccable because everybody's got to use them, and no one pissed on the floor or shit or left shit. It was unbelievable. But I'll give you an example. I was in a hostel in Los Angeles, and there was a bunch of young people staying, and it was cheap and that. And first time I ever stayed in this type of hostel hotel. And you have your own individual room, but the computer and everything is downstairs. So there's no internet in the room. It's you go downstairs and you can tap into the Wi-Fi or plug in. And so they have these big, long tables, communal tables. And when I was down there, I used the bathroom. The bathroom wasn't in my room. I had to go down the hallway. But the bathroom was impeccably clean. Truly. I shared it with other people, and you go in with your shower bag and everything else. And they don't even do this in the gyms here. People are really good. They rinse everything down. Truly. And they leave the bathroom clean. And so I took showers every day and went to the bathroom, and it was, and as they respected, I respected. It's reciprocity. But I was impressed with all these young people staying in this hostel hotel, and they were absolutely respectful to each other. Unbelievably respectful. They impressed me. I was impressed. It was in a low rent district, and I parked in a parking garage, and I went to the subcompact, and the parking garage had a little cracked upper thing. It was a little bit on a slant, and these Hispanic guys ran it, and I parked there, and they watched over my vehicle and everything, which was a rental car, but every night I parked there, and they treated me really well. And then in the nights when I came back, I used to walk out into the impoverished community and do research on, distressed people. I looked at the storefronts, the businesses, the economics. I talked to, black homeless people. That's the homeless people I ran into in that area. Way before I ran into some white homeless, but that goes back to 2005 with Jen. This was later. This is 2010 or so. And Stephanie Trussell had a guy who was living and researching and trying to end black homeless in Los Angeles. But this is before I ever heard his show. I've been doing this demographic population study my whole life, wherever I go, whether it's Mexico and Cancun or Nogales or wherever. I'm hyper vigilant and watch details, ask questions, make friends. Nothing, offensive or anything. And they were good, where the most of the tourists come from, they gave the information. I asked taxi cab drivers. Truly, I ask them every time I went to Vegas, getting demographics, who's coming in, who's going out, what's going on with the casinos, where do you drop off more, where do you pick up from? And I just ask these questions, and it's just basic conversation. And then I ask about criminal activity. Where are the hot spots for pickpockets and so on? What are the spots to avoid? And I ask them, where are the good places, where are the bad places? They have opinions. I'm not saying they're accurate, in my opinion all the time, but I get a cross-sectional, and once I get the cross-sectional, I can weed out the bad information. But I just do this natural census. And I've been doing it my whole life. I chat with people. I met the guy that owns CDW here in Chicago. I met his best friend. He's an economist. He wrote a book. I read his book I bought it immediately and read it from front to back. And he's the reason I took Jen to this breakfast place that's up on Jackson. So, Lou Mitchell's with their donut holes. He talked about it because it was his favorite breakfast place. So me and Jen went there multiple times. I took Matt Buckus there, met him there. It's a really good place. But he wrote a book on economics, and we were talking. He lives here in Chicago. His best friend is the guy that owns CDW. He's a multi-billionaire. And again, it was just, and Jen was right next to me. It was just some basic conversation, not overdoing it. If people want to tap out, they tap out. Or if they got something to do, that's fine. I have other things to do. If they want to talk, I talk. And if they don't, they don't. I just do natural conversation. But I do these studies so I can get a feel for what's going on in the world. And I talk to people like my friends from Russia, my friends from the Middle East. I ask them, what's going home? My friends from Croatia, Serbia, you name it. And they give me their perspectives of what's going on, how's it going on, who's doing what. They had Stephanie Trussell got the man on the street. He used to take video of different places in the Chicago storefronts and that, showing how the demographics were changing and how the mayor was doing a horrible job. She's a black talk show host, and she's conservative. She's a Republican. Her husband's a chef, and he's a white guy. He was part of the Young Republicans, but he was older than me. And he did the man on the street reports for Stephanie Trussell. He's a good guy. But he would show that the mayor is killing the property tax base of the city. And he showed all these abandoned storefronts and that, and the mayor doesn't have any revitalization plans that have any weight. And so I used to interact with all these people. So I was part of the Schaumburg Business Association. I started the Schaumburg Young Professional Association. I started a joint venture between the Chicago Young Professionals and the Schaumburg Young Professionals. And I was looking to take these things nationally and globally. Ask Jennifer Kim. She can tell you. That was my endeavor. They had different plans for their paths in that. So their board members weren't longer term and they were turning over, and so their agendas were very now focused. And so they weren't looking to build these and become a senior board for the young professionals. But the young professionals can have a senior board. Children's Hospital has a junior board. Those are 20-somethings. Can be late teens, 20-somethings. Then they have the senior board. Those are seniors. They can be 70, 80 years old. It doesn't matter. 90, 100 years old. So they have a junior and senior board. But the Chicago Young Professionals didn't have a senior board. And Schaumburg Young Professionals, we did with Lori Stone and that, kind of a senior board with Melther, Patel, and Stell that were part of all the Schaumburg. They were part of the Schaumburg Business Association. And they helped us start, launch, and expand the Schaumburg Young Professionals. But again, Schaumburg and Naperville have two huge economic pockets. Schaumburg's number one, Naperville's number two outside the city of Chicago. Great for young professional organizations. So, again, I'm down here, and this is Northwestern over here in the building to the right. This is where my doctor was, a female doctor, who, after an accident, she said I pulled every muscle in my body and permanently separated my clavicle, which is a bone that goes across. You have two clavicle bones. They attach to the shoulders, and then they attach in the U point of where your throat is. That little U right there, the clavicles attach right and left of it. And so, anyways, and that was from bad directions where I was getting turn-by-turn directions from my friend Jonathan, who sent me down a dead-end street it's pitch black with no dead-end signs on a rainy night, and I couldn't see the end of the street until the last second. I got bad directions. I never told him, but truly, his bad directions ended up in my severe accident. So remember Google when it was the map, then Guts for Apple, and then Apple changed from Google providing it with mapping information, and then Apple Maps rolled it out because they wanted to get it out as fast as possible. Because why did Apple want to get Google out of the mapping? They didn't have to. Google only provided the guts. And because the mapping app is the number one app. It was number 1, 2 most used. It's like banking and mapping apps are two of the highest used apps on the phone. And so Apple wanted to get all that information, and they still got all the information, and it was a proprietary relationship between Google and them, and they had a separate team and a China wall. But what happened? People actually ended up going off bridges, literally, in these rural small areas that were abandoned bridges they run into, and people got severely injured. I don't know if they got killed, but lots of people got unbelievably severely injured because they were going down streets that no longer existed. They were going down pathways to bridges that were abandoned and trying to cross them, and they were literally going through the bridge. They had so many incidents, it was unbelievable. And do you know what, people? Like my friend Han, he's South Korean. He hated Samsung, loved Apple. But because the GPS screwed up for him, and so many more, he moved to Samsung, and once he moved to Samsung, he never went back. He doesn't do anything with Apple. That blunder cost Apple unbelievable amount of users. The reason that Apple was superior because of its user interface, because it got everything correct. Where other places, others would crash, not Apple. And then Apple started having problems with crashing and everything else. Well, other people cut into Apple's business because of its failures. So when you fail in public, as Microsoft used to not, they used to beta test the shit out of their stuff and then launch it. And it was as perfect as can be. And they patched things unbelievably fast. But they had very few apps. But what did Microsoft do? They decided to roll things out, not get better intellectual properties and get better proofing systems and that so they can roll it out just as fast. They decided not to build their infrastructure through excellence, demanding more of their employees, demanding more of their systems that proof the software and everything, demanding more accountability. They decided not to do that and just throw it out there faster with lots of errors. And then Google. Because remember, Microsoft was worried about Mark Andreessen and Netscape, not Google. And Netscape failed because he took it from the University of Illinois without leasing it. He could have leased it and built Netscape out. But he got into a battle, and that's why Netscape failed. He got in a battle with the University of Illinois, and they won. And they took back intellectual properties that were part of building out the browser for Netscape. And they didn't have an answer for that, and so Netscape went under. And Bing stayed there until Bing lost an antitrust lawsuit. And the antitrust lawsuit said they had to open up their browser community to competing browsers. They lost it, their monopoly. And once people could use competing browsers, that opened the way for Google. And I talked to Microsoft people with Bing, and I say, why does my Chrome browser work better integrating with your Word and every other software? Why do I have better integration with your applications than I do with your Bing browser? I have to go to Chrome to do things and then come back to your application because your Bing browser doesn't sync up with your apps well. I said, that is unbelievable. Your competitive edge should be that your browser works better with your application than theirs. It's not that you are doing something to stifle their ability, but you developed it internally. And so you should know the guts and everything better than they do and create better integrations. And I was complaining profusely to Microsoft. And then they rolled out with their OneDrive. And I told them with their special characters, Dropbox integrates. And I'm like, why are you building out OneDrive? Why don't you just buy Dropbox? They're already where you want to be. And it would be cheaper for you just to buy them than build out your own or come in partnership with them. And I said, there's a big problem is the $. I can't use, and so I can't put a $sign when I'm sending these illustrations of everything that I'm making or storing. I can't store any illustrations with the $sign on OneDrive. And they're like, oh yeah, we found out about that. We're working, that'll be something years. And I said, do you know in financial services that people put a $sign as a price indicator So they know it's not 1,000 units, it's $1,000. And I said, I can't use these in saving my illustrations, and that means I can't send them an illustration that what I saved, the words that I used to save it, it shows up on theirs, makes sense to them. And I said, that is a huge failing. That how of all the special characters, you didn't implement the $sign right off the bat. That is failure in your people who developed. And again, I said, just buy Dropbox. It works so seamlessly with your browser, with Google's browser. It's just a very good application. But I would get into these with programmers, from cell phone companies to everything else. They're programmers, they're engineers. And we'd be going over everything. But again, getting into this, here's Booth, University of Chicago. So what's their future expansion? What is their future expansion? When do their classrooms tap out? When do their classrooms tap out? And if their classrooms tap out, and we'll go by the other side, so you have over here the Gleacher Center, and then they expand it right across the street into the NBC building, the University of Chicago Booth, where my ex Jennifer Kim graduated from, where Julie Cho graduated from. These two Korean girls, American Koreans. One moved over, Julie, as a infant, and Jen was born here, but still excelled. And you talk about women empowerment. Well, they're an example of women empowerment. Anyways, you have the Gleacher and you have the University of Chicago, but that's mostly graduate and adult education. And so what is their expansion plans? Truly, what are they going to do as, you know, Chicago moves up and MBAs become more regular? See, MBAs were less regular, but MBAs are now requiring, like, you cannot work on the exchange floor. You know this now? And this happened years ago. My friend Rob Tobler, I know. You can't work on the exchange floor unless you have an MBA. That everybody on the floor has to have a master's degree. That was at, I think, the Chicago Board of Trade or the Mercantile Exchange. That all the people on the floor that are running positions have to have a minimum of a master's or better. And I found this out from Rob Tobler. And then I looked it up, and it's true. So companies are starting to mandate that you have a master's degree. Do you know Deerfield High School? When I went there in 1982, I started at Deerfield High School. Do you know every teacher at Deerfield High School must have a master's degree? You can get hired with just an undergraduate teaching, you know, you have your undergraduate degree and teaching certificate, but they give you, I think it's a couple years to complete your master's. Truly, I think it's only 2 years after you get hired. You have to go to night school and you have to complete your master's or you're fired. You must attain it within a few years after getting hired, if they hire. Usually they don't hire people. You have to be the exception to the rule. They want them already with masters. All my teachers at Deerfield High School had a minimum of a master's degree or better. Master's degree or better. Now you see Naperville is one of the best places to get educations in the United States. Well, Deerfield High School competes. When I graduated, we and New Trier High School were the top 2 public schools in the nation. We were top two right there, 1-1, basically. We tied for the highest SAT and ACT scores in the nation, public schools. There are private schools. I think there's a private school that beat us, both of us. I forget which one. But again, we were 1-1. But the thing is, they require, like at Deerfield High School, their teachers already have master's degrees. And this is in 1982. 1982, you can't work for the high school unless you have a master's degree. So what is the University of Chicago going to do when it comes standard? All these employers say, you can get hired as an undergrad, but you have to have a master's degree by this point. That means all those undergraduates are eventually, like at the University of Arizona, 54,000 undergrads, you're going to have 54,000 graduate students. Because when they go to work, their companies are going to require them to have a master's degree within a short period of time. And not only master's degree, but my friend Jay Kim, he was required to get his master's degree at the University of Chicago and his CFA within X amount of years after starting an employment at Prudential. So for him to move up, he had to acquire these, and then he ended up managing a bond fund for them. And then he went to BlackRock managing a bond fund, much bigger bond fund. But again, he was required to have this, not only undergrad and master's, but also a CFA. I was going to have all those and then some. I was going to surpass Jay Kim by going and having a PhD and many others. And I out-educated him anyways. But we have great conversations. Jay's a great guy. But as he was, as Jen can tell you, I was very ferocious on my education. And so as she was, taking downtime, reading books, enjoying more, I was doing all kinds of things. I started my CFP with her. I got other designations, the CCPS. I was getting tax. I was going to get my something in tax, I forget, and so on. I was doing all kinds of things. Busting my ass. And part of that was I wanted the best possible future for me and her together. So I was doing it for myself, but also I was doing it for us. And as you learn, it is a we scenario. There is no I in teen. It's we or us. And the one thing that I realized that Jen didn't understand that, like when I was getting in shape. And she said, do it for yourself. And she missed the point, because as I get better in shape, I can make love to her better. I can do more around the house. I can do this and that. And she benefits substantially from my better physical shape. I'm less frustrated, more able. Less frustrated, more accomplished. More able to handle things and accomplish things. So that brings more peace and tranquility into the relationship. And so I didn't want to correct her, but I was disheartened she didn't realize that there's a knock-on effect, and it's really us. As much as you want to say I, well, no, it's really us. Even in here, like Yoko Ono, hers art. Music of the Mind. I still had wondering where Julian Lennon is. She can go on tour with her son, Julian. I heard Julian years ago. He is very good. He was very well educated in music. Incredibly well educated in the arts, Julian Lennon. He could go on tour with his mother. They could do a joint thing with him and her. Her son's a mulatto, half white, half Japanese, half Asian, but he's white in skin. He doesn't look Asian at all. He looks more like John. Yeah. It's your favorite t-shirt. Favorite bras, yeah. Favorite girls, the V. V for victory. V for vagina. V for Victoria's Secrets. Victorious women, they can come out with a VV logo. Victorious women. No, what am I saying? VV. Yeah, anyways. The VV would be Victoria women. Victorious women. Yeah, the two V's. They are two V's intertwined to make a W. So victorious women. That's correct. So the V's are side by side, intertwined. Looks like a W, but it's two separate V's. But it still makes victorious women. But anyways, so I'm down on the Magnificent Mile. So again, what is Chicago becoming? Truly, is every movie police and firefighter? Because I remember Adventures with Babysitting I loved, and it was, I think, at the Thompson Center on that slanted roof. One scene, and it used Whacker Drive and many others. There are Ferris Bueller's Day Off and so on. Now they integrate it, like John Candy played a Chicago cop, and it was a movie that was shot in the Wrigleyville area, and John Candy was a Chicago cop, and there was a mortician, and I forget exactly how the movie is. But again, is that all we are? Is the two trick ponies? And then you have Chicago Med, which both Chicago, PD brings in people that get injured into the hospital, and fire departments bring people who are injured into the hospital. So the crossovers make sense for both of them, because at any fire, usually you're blocking off the scene with police, right? And police are sometimes escorting the fire trucks or paramedics. So, again, they work and they end up in the hospital, right? So you have this three-way crossover. So the shows can help each other by putting clips of each of the shows into their individual shows. So it could be a Chicago, something happened and somebody had a heart attack, or they fell down on the bike trail on the lakefront and the ambulance both broke wrists and the ambulance picked them up. Well, that's from, Chicago Fire, and the paramedics pick them up and they shoot the scene in Chicago Fire, and then they carry on with them showing up in Chicago Med. So they drop them off. And so the whole Chicago Fire thing, they pick them up in that, and then that ends that scene, and they move on to the rest of the story of the Chicago Fire, but it doesn't end. You see the rest of it in Chicago Med, because now you see the paramedics dropping them off in the hospital, the biker, taking them out into the hospital. And that's the end of Chicago Fire, when they drop it off at the hospital. It's the same thing with the police. When they have somebody and they take them in and they drop them off at the hospital, or a cop gets shot, and you see the show and they carry on with the investigation and the Chicago PD and the investigation, they find who shot the cop and so on and so forth. And then it goes to Chicago Med, and you see the cop getting ushered in by Chicago Fire, and then you see the cops showing up in the hospital, visiting the shot officer, And those are the characters from Chicago PD showing up in Chicago Med. And so the shows leave off segments and pick them up. And I think they were doing this with a crossover with Flash. Leaving off segments and then picking them up in the other show, where Flash went on with this and then picked them up in other. Not exactly the way I'm saying it, but they were trying to do something fairly similar. Their integration wasn't good. They really didn't do it well. This would be seamless, and you pair up the episodes. This is finishing, this is the integration, and you say season 2, Chicago Med, with integration from season 2, episode 1, police officer showing up in hospital. Or season 3, episode 1, paramedics from Chicago Fire showing up in hospital, dropping off biker who broke both wrists when he fell over the front of a bike in a bike accident on Lakeshore Drive. That's what happened to Bono in New York. He got in a bike accident, went over the front, broke both his wrists. I have a friend in the mountain that went over the front and broke both his wrists. What the fuck? Well, I can't say anything to them, but they're leaking a lot of fluid. You're leaking fluid! But anyways, so you can do these crossovers, and then you can integrate it into a movie. And so when you have a movie down here and they're using the police or the fire or the hospital, they can use the characters from Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD in it. Truly, why build it out? Why not just use it and integrate it into the movie and have them pick up a portion of the budget? So it makes shooting the film a lot cheaper. And you get cross-promotion. See characters from Chicago Med in Batman, the next adventure. And then they have characters from Chicago Med, PD, and Fire in Batman, the next adventure. And so they get crossover. How much of the crossover? It depends. You have your own characters that are police chiefs or whatever, but you integrate with certain aspects. You use where they use their fire pieces and so on, and you want cops to work the whatever. So they already have the basic infrastructure for you, and you're using some of their infrastructure or all their infrastructure, and you get to choose. But it reduces you from going out and having to do casting calls for Cop 1, or I need a stuntman to do this scene with, police. Well, they already have all that for you. So you have to do less of finding, and it brings up the ability to shoot the film and move the film through quicker. So you're using strategically placed logistics to make things happen faster. They already know their lines. They already play those parts. So it's very easy for them to do these things, to integrate. So it's already what they're doing on a daily basis in the TV show. So it allows the TV show to integrate into movies. And it doesn't matter what the movie company is, it's a leasing deal. And those characters get a little bit of cross promotion. And it brings money into those TV shows that are non-related to show direct revenue. So it gives them a little bit of added satellite income. And so it makes also, they're shooting it in Chicago and that, and in turn it makes the shows more interesting, or makes the audience desire to look at shows from Chicago. Truly. Like back in the day, you had Welcome Back Kotter and all these shows from New York. Well, and the other shows from New York, it kind of makes you interested in what other shows are going on from that area. Indirectly, there's a cross-sell. Not a direct one, not a heavy tie, but truly, like Different Strokes, that was from New York. They lived in Upper Park Avenue. And so then you had the Jeffersons, and they lived in New York, and it was a dry cleaners, and so on. So again, Chicago's the number 3 market, and should be looking to get a bigger piece of the pie. So anyways, this works, but we have a big theatrical district, and that needs to grow. And our opera and our symphony orchestra. So again, things need to grow. And it doesn't take back what I said. I think moving the Bears would be truly a great situation. They can expand Museum Park. They can do a lot of things with that. Or they can bring in all kinds of college sporting. Like they said, they built that new stadium at Northwestern. Well, they could have used Chicago Bears Stadium. They have a downtown campus, and it's a straight shot down Lakeshore Drive. So it's not like it's really that disassociated with Northwestern. It's not right on campus, but it is. Or Northwestern now can play, a game a year, or they can use the stadium that's off campus for Chicago hosting a bowl game. So they can use that to host bowl games. Or, let's say the NCAA soccer tournaments. They have, March Madness. Well, they have the same thing for soccer. Wisconsin is one of the best schools in college for soccer. And so they can have college soccer, both men and women's, at Soldier Field. I'm talking the playoffs. So the Division One. And so they can have those at those larger, those national tournaments at Soldier Field. Truly, and they happen at different times of the year. Some are spring sports, some are fall sports, and then you can get summer baseball leagues. And they could have, I don't know if you could, that's not quite the design at Soldier Field, but the whole point is there's ways to fill Soldier Field with other related stuff that still makes the stadium highly viable. And so, you can bring up UIC Flames, or DePaul University can start a football program. And so you could have multiple colleges go into Soldier Field. So that works around with the colleges and helps promote them. And how there's tons of colleges right around downtown. And so it helps promote them. It helps grow their, academic side and athletic side. So they have a bigger footprint. They draw a more diverse student population. People that want to play college sports like me. My friend Brian Donnelly, he trades a high-speed trading company, and he played baseball at Dayton. Now, he didn't play much in high school, but he got up to speed and he made the college team And he played college baseball at Dayton University in Ohio. I think it's Dayton, yeah. But he got all inspired and he wanted to play college baseball. So he was a walk-on kid who made it onto the team. That's my understanding. But again, it's a smaller school. Division III, I think, baseball. But still. So again, he wanted to do academics and athletics. And it gave him an opportunity. So here's Chicago Chinatown. If you're going to do the 78, there's no way you can't build out Chinatown. Because this is Clark Street right here. Right there it says Clark Street. And you're going to have to build out Chinatown. So again, there's no way around it, so you're going to have to invest and build out Chinatown. And you're going to have to make this bridge. You're going to have to get rid of the homeless, this filth. So again, like they shot, Married with Children. They did the outside of the house, and the whole show was shot in Los Angeles. So again, you're going to have to renovate all this. It's like Old Tucson. They created a studio in Tucson called Old Tucson. That's where they do all their country westerns. It's an old, town. So Tucson modernized. They created a whole town in the desert that is just for movies called Old Tucson. And when it's not shooting movies, what is it? It's a theme park. Not a theme park. It's a museum, kind of. Yeah, it's a museum. You take tours of it, and so you can see how the West was. Because it's, how, these old Western towns looked. And so people go down there and they take tours of it, and they tell what movies were shot there. This was the shooting of this Western or that Western or so on and so forth. And so as they shoot modern Westerns like Aliens and Cowboys, that was a great spin. I love that movie. Think about it. They're going back a ways to the Cowboys, and they're going back in the past, and it's the Wild Wild West. But now the Cowboys are run into aliens. So you integrate aliens with cowboys. It's a great movie. And it takes this modernistic ships and everything, and the aliens bring in the modern weapons and the spaceships and the modern crafts, and they're still on saddleback and horseback and so on. And it's a great immersion of the future and the past. Cowboys and aliens. So again, you don't need to keep the things the way they are. This should be coming into the future. And they need to upgrade this. If you stay this way, the infrastructure, the sewer systems, the gas lines, the electrical lines, all this, the train tracks, all of that has to be replaced. And you can't stay that way because of the wood and everything else, because the materials that were used, we didn't know about asbestos and lead paint and all this stuff that's in the drywall and everything else. So you have to modernize it. So you don't have a choice but to modernize. If not, everybody around here is going to get incredibly sick as this stuff ages and you get more flakes in the mortar. And I'll pull out the stuff they put in mortar can be highly toxic. So you don't understand. They used all kinds of stuff and bricks in that when they flake, and mortar flakes and the concrete and all this shit they used, all the painting and all the paints and everything else, literally are toxic. And they weren't so toxic because they weren't decaying. But they're decaying, and as they decay, they become more toxic. So you can't keep it the way it is, or people are going to get very, very sick. So you have to modernize. You have to renovate. You have to refresh and then demo and replace. So you can't stay there. All these people are fucked in their housing. Their piping is decaying. You watch and go down and break chunks of those pipes off. The material they used in those pipes, not good. The way they made pipes in that, not good. The stuff they used in cement, not good. So you can't stay this way. And this is all dressed up for the Lunar New Year. But how many people are you in a sacrifice? And God, this is why I told you, if you're screwing me, I'm not getting screwed. You're eventually going to make everybody highly sick. People are going to get so unbelievably sick because you want to stay in this world that we don't have the money, we can't do this, it has to stay. Well, you're fucked. You're breathing it in, you're sucking it down, and you're going to die. You're going to suffer. And yeah, they may treat you, but how many times are you go into remission and then it's going to come back? Because if you don't get out of the shit comes back. You don't get more resistant, in a way you get less resistant. So, but they didn't know this back then. So the only thing you can do is update. And that's why I give all the stuff on concrete and everything else. So when you update, you don't run into what they ran into the past through pure ignorance. They didn't know better. But now you do. So you can't leave things the way they are. You can't. You're going to pay for it dearly with your children, your pregnant wives, your grandparents as they get old and become more susceptible. So you're just doing it to yourself. You're the ignorant pieces of garbage. So you're the suckers for Satan. So it's not me, it's you. You think I got it bad. What happens to me is going to be exponentially worse to you. So you think what's coming for you is exponentially worse. So you think you can lie and deceive me. The only suckers are you. The only suckers are you, your family, and your communities. So you're the suckers. So you can't stay this way. And as God watches you sacrifice all these lives for your deception, well, that makes you more and more evil. How many people are you willing to throw under the bus to deceive? How many people are you willing to kill? How many people are you willing to make suffer for your lies? And every day God watches as you throw more under the bus, makes you more wicked and more wicked. You move further and further away from God. I said you're not getting closer, you're getting further from God. every day you become more wicked to him as you continue on with your lies and deception. And then you double down on it and try to figure out how to integrate it even more into lies and deception, which shows you're even more wicked. So it's unbelievably, you becoming more and more satanic by the day. You are the beast. And you becoming more of the beast every day. As you failed to repent and change and move away from sin, you become more of the beast every single day. So Revelations is here. So again, you can go with this, but knocking down the projects was one great thing. But the thing is, you had to get rid of all the crime first. But getting rid of those buildings and that structure and that environmental nightmare was a very good thing. So do you know getting rid of Children's Hospital was a good thing? They had to renovate it, but knocking it down, that hospital was an environmental hazard. I worked in it, or volunteered in it for years. It was an environmental hazard. And knocking it down and getting rid of it in Lincoln Park was actually a blessing. Yes, I wanted them to open up the DePaul medical program and that, but that place had to be refreshed. They had to gut that. That place had to go one way or another. Either partially and re-renovating it and gutting it, because it was a home to unbelievable thousands, tens of thousands of rodents and insects that were under the foundation. Unbelievable. I don't know about the stadium here, but that's the way it was at Wrigley Field. Under the foundation of Wrigley Field was incredible amounts of rodents and insects. So I don't know about here if they've ever looked under, but Wrigley Field was that way. It was unbelievable. They had to renovate it and gut it. They tore up the field. They tore up and went under. They had to gut it and clean it out. So you have to look at that, the sustainability, because remember in the wintertime, these places, they burrow in, and every winter that goes by, because they didn't set up, you can put lavender in concrete. Do you know that? You can scent concrete where it would have a mild scent to it that doesn't damage the structural integrity. You can put certain fibers in it that have a natural scent to it that actually increase the strength and durability, ductile of the concrete, but also put off a nice odor that keeps rodents and insects away. You can integrate that into the concrete itself. Like the sewers, those cement sewers, they can integrate it into the cement, the fibers in that, where the concrete has a certain scent, a certain odor that keeps away the rodents and insects in that. They don't want to be in the sewer systems. They want to stay away from them. And it creates a natural barrier, and that natural barrier keeps them from burrowing through the concrete because they can eat through it. And they do tear through it. And they make their holes in the sewer systems and that. So they make it, yes, like Swiss cheese. So you can integrate fibers in that have these natural scents that you can create them synthetically. And they put off this odor over a long period of time that keep the rodents and insects away. and this keeps them from messing around with wires or anything. Truly. And those scents, and now you have to worry about high concentrations, but you're not trying to make high concentration. You're not wanting to reach a level where it's toxic to man. So you have to watch the crossover. And you have to get it right, where it's a deterrent to them, but not toxic to man. But you can do that. And as we replace infrastructure, we have this technology to develop it, modernize it, and perfect it here, and help other places. And we can consult and use, that's with Deloitte and others, and consult to their industries and help them. One way you get business is by sharing intellectual properties, and you get a royalty for that intellectual property. They do the sweat equity. They do all the hard work. They gather the materials. They make the product. You give the intellectual properties to make it happen. So again, you're going to have to do this. So it's not if, it's just when. And the longer you wait, the worse off it's going to be. And you think with COVID-19, they would be going through these restaurants and that, looking for lead and all kinds of other surface issues with material and that. And the government can give subsidies to help upgrade and modernize. But you think with COVID-19, I walk in these places and it's a joke. You would think they would force modernization. That the materials and everything they're using, they can't use. You know, those wooden handles, bacteria gets into them. You clean the surface, but the bacteria burrows into the wood and everything itself. So again, these are things they didn't know before. So again, you think they would have been using this COVID-19 as an approach to modernize and require these modernizations of the infrastructure for, you know, basically in the hospitality industry. Going through and not having restaurant rescue where they go in the kitchen and the shit is like 20 years old. I worked in commercial kitchens, and our chefs wanted to have almost nothing left at night. We carried very little things at Charlie's. We carried very little in inventory. We went through inventory. We had daily deliveries. We only kept extra to make it through to the next delivery. By the time the next delivery was come in, we made it through that day and we were done. So we didn't have a lot of storage room. We had very little storage room. Even for my kegs. I turned over my kegs faster than anyone. I turned over my beer and liquor inventory faster than anyone. Marty Fossey, Tim Rasmussen, they can all tell you. I went through my liquor and my beer and that. I had fresh kegs literally every week. I got huge keg orders. A keg would last a half a week, sometimes 1 week. The longest I ever had a keg for was 1 week. And then you have half kegs and quarter kegs you can get for stuff you don't use as much, but ordered the smaller ones. But I churned the stuff. It didn't sit on the shelf. A week was a long time. So my stuff was always highly fresh. I was getting the new booze in, the new beer in, the new stuff. So my stuff didn't sit around. I'm not a storage. I'm not a warehouse. I get the stuff in and out the door. That's how you make money. It's like the trash. You get it in and you get it out. You don't let it sit around. The plasma furnaces and everything else. So I wonder with cellular rate, truly updating the stadium, going under it, and really looking under those foundations and seeing what's going on. But, it's a nice park in that. But again, there's a lot of college baseball teams from UIC, the Flames. They need a stadium. We had a fairly decent baseball stadium at the University of Arizona, and they built a nice women's softball stadium that was really nice. Oh, we had a very nice women's softball. It was as good as they have in Schaumburg, or maybe nicer. But it was really nice women's college softball stadium. But we won so many national women's championships, it was ridiculous for softball. We are a perennial powerhouse. And we have a really nice basketball stadium. I would assume they updated it. But do you know what the University of Arizona did to enhance its recruiting? It built a whole new exercise strength training, truly, with racquetball courts. You know, the football players played racquetball. They were mandated to play racquetball. Why? To build up their foot speed and hand-eye coordination. Because a racket is small, the racquetball is not big, and it required short bursts of speed. Racquetball in particular, you had to move around your footing really rapidly, and the ball moves incredibly fast in racquetball. So it had to intensify your hand-eye coordination. So the players played racquetball. They built racquetball courts for the football players to play racquetball. And they invested in a athletic training center that was one of the best in the United States for any college. And why did they do that? Because they wanted to get higher end recruits. So one is showing them the facilities that can build their bodies. Now you have to get the intellectual and build their minds. That's the coaching. But they already have one of the top exercise sports science programs in the country. So they already had the infrastructure from the college. That's where my roommate, who's one of the best exercise sports science guys, and Dan Worth, they were all integrated into the University of Arizona's exercise sports science department. And they built this cutting edge strength and conditioning training so they could recruit incredibly high-end athletes. So it's the same thing. Now you're building these centers like for quantum physics or quantum computing and that. Well, it integrates with the educational systems because now they can recruit for that because they can place them into the quantum computing. So again, it allows them to integrate. And so now you want UIC, University of Chicago, Northwestern, North Park University, and others to start building out educational programs within their computer departments and that will bring these people, eventually give them the abilities needed to integrate them into the workplace. And they do internships and so on. So that's all part of building the infrastructure. It's the trickle on down. And that means it has to work through the high schools and elementary schools and preschools truly, and getting them exposure as a career path opportunity as they move through from preschool to elementary to high school. And they should be thinking about their future in each step of the way. They should be thinking about what classes I want to take in elementary school. You have your general and you have your electives. So it's the same thing in high school. You know, you can take photography, you can take many things. But people don't do this. But this is what I learned in the CCPS, the Certified College Planning Specialist. But we looked at from preschool all the way through, and through graduate school, and how to integrate sports and everything else. So again, you're looking at building this. Building a brighter future. So it's a trickle on up and a trickle on down. It is a neural feedback. And you have to build the neural feedback properly, or your ecosystem dies. So one thing is assaulting people with vehicles is a destruction. What high-end person wants to deal with fucking pieces of shit? Low-life fucking pieces of garbage. I don't know anyone. What do you think they did with Upper Park Avenue? You know, I've been in New York, and I was amazed at how they were cleaning up L.A., and do you know, I ran into no problems on the highway, no problems on the streets. I didn't get tailgated. I had no problems in Los Angeles and New York. No traffic incidents, no incidents on the sidewalk, no disrespect anytime, anywhere. And they were getting them better, as my ex was in all these places. And she was amazed how they were cleaning everything up. How they were getting rid of the gangs and getting rid of the violence and implementing these systems and being very harsh on crime. They cleaned up downtown LA. It used to be a shithole full of all bums. It's not there anymore. Truly, it was disappearing when I was there. And I went back over decades, and it was shrinking, and people were revitalizing the downtown, and all that that was gone. They only put that up for a movie, and then they take it down. So it doesn't exist anymore. The tent cities and that. They're gone. They only put that up for a movie setting, and then they take it down. It doesn't exist anymore. And that's what's supposed to happen. Like here, you get rid of it, and if there's a movie shooting, you put it up, it's up for the movie, and you get rid of it. It doesn't deteriorate property value. And it's not where they can say this, like, is where they shot this, and they brought in the tents and everything and built Tent City, and then once the movie was done, they returned it back to normal. That's what they do. Like, they built the sets in the gym they talked about in the piece I put out. That, okay, because the house wasn't big enough, they replicated it inside of a school gym. And once they were done shooting all the scenes, they took it down and turned the gym back to normal. So, again, here's where the 78's going to be. And it's got the Roosevelt collection. So, I don't get what you're doing, but this shit can't stay the way it is. So, how many people? The problem is, we've had a drag on our economy where everybody else is trying to improve life and the quality of life so they can get higher and higher productive economies, getting more out of their people, where we're staying in the past and allowing our people to suffer. Well, then we're going to get less out of them, and then these economies are going to overtake us unbelievably. So I would assume Germany and everyone else is getting their stuff. Japan is doing massive things to all kinds of things. Now Russia is. They even brought back an award for a mother that has 10 children. They're like national heroes. A mother that ends up having 10 children gets a national honor for helping out the Russian population, reversing the downward turn of the population. That mother is considered a hero, they said. I'll post it on my Tumblr, but they said they're giving them awards. Russia was bigger in the United States in 1940. The United States had 132 million. Russia had almost 200 million before World War II. After World War II, the United States went up to 179 million or something like that. Russia went down towards 132 million or so, somewhere in there. They lost 30, I think it was maybe 140 something million, and they haven't grown. We've grown to 300 and something, but it's cost us a lot of problems because most of it's been through immigration. We don't even hit our own replacement rate for our citizens. And what does that cost us? Unbelievable problems in what? There, I go by McCormick Center. Unbelievable problems in consistency. Because these people don't grow up in the systems. They come from other places and they have to integrate, and they don't want to integrate into the system. And me and David used to talk about it, and it's caused us problems. They don't grow up in the system, and they don't integrate into the system. And so it's always people dissenting and wanting to change everything. And what happens? Government programs are good today and no good tomorrow. And so the government builds out all this infrastructure, and the infrastructure in a few years is no longer needed. It's obsolete because of the incredible turnover in the population, not replacing people, them dying off and replacing them with immigrants who come from a whole different background. And you get all this dissension, and this is why the United States is the most violent nation in the world in that way. So instead of you grow up with Chinese and you know them from birth to grave, you're with this person and you're not, and no one knows anyone, and they can't work anything out because everybody comes in with a different agenda, and it's always in flux, and the local, county, and state and federal government programs are good for a few years, and then they're obsolete because of the population turnover. It's unbelievable. Baja went under because of staff turnover. Vanguard, do you know what Vanguard did? They monitored and made sure they had some of the lowest staff turnover in the industry. And if turnover was going up, they would bear down on human resources. They would get literally ruthless with human resources, telling them they're going to fire people. Oh, they would get seriously. The people in human resources would get a massive flame lit under their ass that they're improperly hiring, improperly training. They wanted incredibly low turnover rates. They needed new people to come in, but how did they turn over? You move up through the organization. That's how Jackson works itself too. They force you to move up through the organization. So you start as this and internal, and you move to external, then you move up to regional and so on. And you move up through the organization. So the turnover is not you leaving, is that you're moving up and somebody's coming in to replace you underward. But they have consistency. And if you're not willing to do that, they fire you. They fire you. They hire you and tell you this is the way. And if you don't like it, then you're terminated. But there is no staying where you are. Either you're moving up or you're getting terminated. But that's what they do. They want really stable, long-term employees that know the system, like with John Hancock. I used to deal with people in Boston. One of the names of the guy was John, and then there was females. And they were with Hancock for 40, 50, 60 years. I mean, decades and decades and decades. And they knew the system. They knew the old daily policies. They knew the weekly policies. They knew our monthly. They knew all the old whole lives and the different forms that we had so many. One thing about John Hancock was different than everybody else. We had the most innovative forms of whole life in the industry. The most innovative forms of whole life in the industry. Now we went to all UL and we became a UL company, but Manulife still so very much a whole life company still. And it had some of the most innovative whole life, unbelievably innovative whole life. But these people, it was incredible talking to them. You talk about mentorship. They can tell you all the changes in CEO leadership, the history of the policies, when this policy was being used, when this policy was replaced for a new design, what the new design is different than the old design. They were unbelievable. And I used to talk to them, and they were great friends of mine. I called them friends, and they called me friends. And I used to talk to them unbelievable amount. And they got me so up to speed on the history of the company, it was unbelievable. I mean, going all the way back. They had to pull up microfiche. We had policies from 1800s and so on. I mean, unbelievable. And Manulife bought John Hancock. Why? Most recognizable name in the United States. Why would you take away the John Hancock building? Michael Jordan is not the most recognizable name in the United States. John Hancock, the signature on the Declaration of Independence and so on, the Constitution. He's the most recognized person in the United States, or was. And Manulife bought them because they had incredible entry into the high-end marketplace. Truly, they focused on a much upper-class marketplace. And that's why they didn't sell a lot of term insurance. Truly, they didn't sell a lot of term because they were focused on the upper-end marketplace where those people have a lot of money and they're not as interested in term. They're interested in socking away money. And so they designed their policies accordingly. That was their focus point. So that's why our term insurance really sucked. But they didn't worry about it because the clients really didn't demand much of our term insurance. It's gotten better. They put Vitality on it. They offered an unemployment rider and so on. And they have enhanced it, but still, it's not their bread and butter. And nor should it be their bread and butter. They're looking at the permanent insurance market, and they want to win from the index to the UL to some others. And they had an UL they came out with that was trying to mimic a whole life. It needed tweaking. It just wasn't quite there, but truly, they were creating a UL universal life that had equal guarantees to a whole life. They wanted to get a UL that could compete with whole lives or beat whole lives, because they got out of the whole life business in the United States and they realized they made a mistake. So they were trying to create a universal life and a few versions of them that could compete with any whole life. So I don't know what they're doing now. That's what they're trying to do. The product wasn't quite there yet, but they were tweaking it, and they wanted to compete or beat whole life on a UL chassis, which gives you more transparency than a whole life. But they were getting there. But I don't know. It's 10 years or so. So I don't know where they're at now. And JLL elevators, almost positive. But again, where is this going? Because all of this has to be updated. And I'm going to put the research on Tumblr to support my statements. And so, again, it can't stay the way it is. It's not healthy. So, they're going to have to get rid of it. They're going to have to update. It's like the sand on the beach with the beachcombers and that. They didn't know about all these things. And that's why you have to go through the sand on the beach and clean out the sand on the beach and so on. And you have to do these things. There's a healthy amount of bacteria and everything. People shed skin when they go to the beach and so on and so forth. But there's also a unhealthy amount. So there's a crossover. Michael Reese in all this. So, again, terminating the past and bringing it into a better future. So, getting rid of the garbage. Isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what they talk about? I talk to people from Iraq and all over the place, refugee, and they're talking about a brighter future, getting rid of the garbage, getting rid of the thugs, getting rid of the criminal, getting rid of the corruption. So they can have, as a senior, I can have a brighter tomorrow. As a middle-aged person, I can have a brighter tomorrow. As a young kid, I can have a brighter tomorrow. Getting rid of the pieces of garbage. And how do you do that? You break them. You break them. They don't break you, you break them. Isn't that what they said with Mr. T? I'm going to break you, sucker. So, again, you don't get broken, you break. So you go around breaking the pieces of garbage. And here, all the trucks in that, a logistical center. But my thing with all these trucks, the rail yard, and you can have this logistical center underground. It doesn't have to be above ground. And the logistical center can be underground, attaching to the rail line that goes underground. And they move in and move out all these trailers. That's one way to do it. And you can reclaim all the land above for park and everything else. So, again, it's one way to reclaim tons of land in the urban center. It's like, what were they doing? I was watching a video on YouTube. I got to post it on Tumblr. But they were talking about reclaiming all this space under bridges and all that to make all this green space, that all this prior, all this dingy stuff under the bridge, now they have grass and plants, and they made it like this amazing green space. So they were transforming it. Instead, you look under this bridge and it's about as dingy as can be, right? So how do you transform it? And that's what they're looking to. Reclaiming the land and turning something that before, under these bridges and highways, was just not good stuff, turning into beautiful, vibrant green space. So, McCormick Center, right? So, can I go all the way through? Or am I going to get blocked off? But again, they're looking like turning it. This is where I ran for the marathon. We went right through here for the Chicago Marathon. The marathon went right through here when I ran it in 2001 after 9/11. I ran the marathon in October. And we ran right through here. The marathon went right under this and emerged on the other side. So, the Chicago Marathon. So, I don't know if the Chicago Marathon still goes through here or not. But it used to. And so, I don't know what they're doing with making this more vibrant. But, again, this is the city, right? How are they making themselves better? So I can't go through. No outlet private road. Okay. So I have to go back the other way. So Chicago PD. Huh. I gotta reset my car. So gotta reboot. But anyways, this is where we ran through for the Chicago Marathon after 9/11. And even through this tunnel, everybody was yelling, USA! USA! And I never felt so much country pride and country spirit than running that marathon. It was incredible. All through the marathon, people are USA. And then when we ran by the projects and that, by Comiskey Park, there were these lower income housing. All these black people are outside playing music and saying, "You can do it. Go, USA, USA." And there was this great call for country unison, and to put bygones behind us and move into a brighter future. And uniting America, right? Uniting America. Moving America into a tighter union, a better union. Moving it forward in a more positive and productive manner. That's what everybody talked about after 9/11. That we have to work on national security and global security, and we need to create better and safer futures for everyone. We can't have another 9/11. And that people have to be promised a better, safer, and brighter future. And everybody was talking on that, that we have to do this. This is the American way. So where is all that? I'm 26 years, 25 in October. Again, 9/11 was in September. This September will be 26 years, right? Since it? 25, 26. So it'll be his 25th year. So where are people, 25 years later? Shouldn't we have come better and united and more advanced? That's what everybody, but these things go in one ear and out the other. And that's why Aristotle, from Socrates to Plato to Aristotle, talked about greatness as consistency. It doesn't go in one ear and out the other. You do it today, you do it tomorrow, and you keep on doing it. It is a forever thing, greatness. You're not just great one day and stink the next. You're great every day. That is the test of greatness. I showed you with Michael Jordan in his career. His average points, how many games, he never missed a game, and he performed at high standards every single game. That's the test of greatness. Doing it today and doing it every game, never letting down, and doing it over a long period of time. But what I see with 9/11, everybody's like, yeah, we got to do all this, yeah. And then give it a few years and it's like, well, no more of that. Back to the old bullshit. Well, that shows you're a failure. You're not great. You suck. So what are they doing to modernize our lakefront? To move it into the future? To make it this greater thing, McCormick Place, right? What are they doing to modernize? What are they doing to move this into a greater future? No outlet. But what are they doing? Look at all this lakefront right down here. And this is, all by Soldier Field and that, right? And what are they doing with all this path? How are they moving this area into a brighter future? What are they doing to make this? Like you say, Chicago can't. Well, Naperville has been the number one city in the United States and competing as one of the best in the world year in and year out. So it shows a benchmark that Illinois can be incredible if people are willing. So I don't get it. It's a smaller city, but it still shows that it's feasible to be the best in the country, to be the best in the world. But if there's a will, then there's a way. But getting people on board and then not here today and gone tomorrow, but people truly staying with it. So what are they doing down here? How are they every day building a brighter future? And that's why you have a plan. And you keep on benchmarking it back to the past, and you see how, so you never forget the past, because if you forget the past, you lose your direction in the present. So you have your plan, you put it in place, and then you keep on benchmarking it back and seeing how you progressed each year into a greater and greater future. But do they do that with our government? Do they, from the federal to the state to the county to the local? How are they moving forward? I'm not saying everything will turn out great, but you take it with a screwdriver and you tweak it, right? Hopefully you don't have to scrap things, because, then you really screwed up. But you're thinking, like McCormick Place, they were looking to expand this further. And handling even bigger conventions because corporations are getting bigger. Do you know that? Walmart is now in Europe and now in Asia, now in places it never was before. So if you have a convention with Walmart managers from around the world, you need more space than ever before. So corporations aren't getting smaller, they're getting bigger. And so across the street, this is McCormick Place on both sides, and it's right here on the lakefront. They can do the boat and water show and have the McCormick Place expand into the lakefront, where literally they open out in the bays, they open the door, and there's the lake inside McCormick Place. And you can go on boat rides and that right from McCormick Place. So, the Air and Water Show, and that Air and Water Show should be featuring a big, huge convention at McCormick Place simultaneously with the Air and Water Show. What's the point of the Air and Water Show? To feature air and water. And so they can have a huge convention in town with all the boat manufacturers and all the air manufacturers, from private planes to all kinds of stuff, leasing private planes and so on and so forth. Truly, all that stuff is featured in the Air and Water Show, and people can look at, boats and sailboats, motorboats, sailboats, even sailboats have motors, and they can use them where the wind, figuring out how they integrate, where the sailboat has a rechargeable battery on the motor. So using wind turbines on the mast of the sail, where it turns little wind turbines that power the electric on the sailboat. And then it can use solar panels on them, so if no wind when they're staying still, they absorb solar radiation when there's no wind. So the kilo, the mass, can generate wind and solar power for the sailboat. And it powers their battery motor and the motor, so when there's no wind, they have the little motor. And they do have a motor for when there's very low wind. And it powers the electricity, it powers the sanitation plant, so you can go to the washroom and process the waste properly and everything else. So the Air and Water Show should hook up. And then the RV show hooks up to that. But what do you have? An RV truck show. It's really RVs and SUVs and trucks to pull watercraft. So you have to have trucks and bigger SUVs that are designed to pull watercraft. So it's just not the watercraft and RV, because really you're trying to sell trailers, not so much the watercraft per se. You're trying to sell the RV and the trailer to pull the wave runners, small fishing boats, and so on. So it's a different way of going about things. But they're different shows. But again, they kind of cross-correlate. And I gotta go back up Lakeshore Drive, so I'm gonna turn around here. But again, you build the plan, and this is what the federal government does. So when you exchange from one administration to the next, they hand over the master plan. And they know where they are, and then they can tweak the master plan. And every administration passes it on to the next, and they modernize the master plan. They tweak it, they figure out what's working, what's not, and what they need to inject into it. So it's not like they don't get initiatives that are their own, but you get this blended of Democrat, Republican, and so on, that is passed forward and that you're tweaking and building on each other, and who can expand the master plan better, who can have the greatest growth of the master plan, who can govern what we have and take it to new heights. Those are the people you re-elect, because they take what you have and make it even greater, and where you don't are missing pieces, they fill in the missing pieces of the puzzle and they complete it to make it even greater. So there should be a formal master plan on the federal, state, county, and local level. And they pass that off as they exchange and replace, even for the Senate and House, for their areas, whether it's the state or the county board and the county board governor for that area. And so they have their plan and how their plan interfaces with others. And so it's constantly tweaking it and looking to perfect it. And they get to know everything that's going on, where it is, where it stands, what the growth rates were, what was working, what wasn't, what is rescinding, what needs to be modernized, what needs to be changed in direction. And so they can just keep on building greater and greater tomorrows. But we never did that. And so everything is piecemeal, like this shit. Pieces of freaking garbage. Truly, pieces of garbage. And it's like that highway. I shouldn't get on the traffic that's going that fast in that lane. I have to get over to Lakeshore Drive. And that's what they talked about. Poorly designed highway systems, where you need to get over multiple to get on here, but other people are trying to get over there, and you have cross traffic and you create accidents. That's why they have underpasses and overpasses. That traffic goes under, or that traffic goes over, and so on. You're on this plane, they're on that plane. So you can cross without what? Interfering with each other. So you're looking to have people move seamlessly on and off. It's like the merge. You got two lanes coming down into what? Two lanes. It becomes one highway, but they don't drop a lane. But they do on Lakeshore, on the Edens and the Kennedy. When 90 and 94 merge, you lose a lane. And so you get two lanes into one, and that causes congestion. And so you want to integrate it further down, not as rapidly. You want to kick the can further down the road and cause a more subtle integration. Not as much of a drastic. When they hit, you lose a lane right away. And that's not what you want. You want to be able to allow them to move in and slowly integrate upstream. So it's a subtle integration, not a rapid integration. So traffic continues to move smoothly. But anyways, I wonder how they're doing this, how they're moving it into a brighter future. Every day in every way, right? That's what we want. That's what I want. You keep on destroying my life. You don't make my life in a greater way, in a better way. You make my life worse. So the people leadership like Brandon Johnson, where is his great epiphanies? That he's this great leader and he knows how to put you in place today and tomorrow. What do you think I was telling Tina Chen? God perfects his plans. He knows he's perfect with knowing the past. He knows the present. He knows the future. And he tweaks things. And he's constantly making them better. And if not, we wouldn't even be here today. So he constantly overcomes challenges and tweaks things and constantly works and refines them. But also, there's a point of integration. And if people can't integrate enough, then sometimes, like a business, you have to fire them. And that's Revelations. He's firing you. Just getting rid of you. You just can't make it. You're too flawed. And so if you can't get over the hurdle, then he has to get rid of you. Like any business, if you can't get over the hurdle, the business gets stifled and eventually will die. And so if you can't get over the hurdle, mankind will eventually stifle and die. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So he's watching to see if you can get over the hurdle. And if you show no inability or no will, or both, no will and no inability, because sometimes people don't have the ability, but they have the will. And eventually, through tenacity, they'll will it in. But if you don't have either, then it's pointless. Then it's over. So, I'm seeing where you're at and determining if you should go on. That's like any business, stress testing. Seeing if you can. You keep on thinking, stress testing me. He's stress testing you. Your ability to adapt and overcome. Your ability to move forward into a better light, into a better world. And if you're not willing to, then it's over. We already had the big restart with Noah. Next time, like anything, you just scrap it. And that's what you don't understand with the Bible. You had the big restart, and if that don't work, then you have to scrap it all together. So there's no, in Revelation, it's just the end. Because you failed to overcome. So it's your choice. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy then, if you don't change. So God gives you every chance, as God gave Judas. And Jesus and the disciple gave him every chance. And hopefully you're not like Judas. That you're too stubborn, too stupid, too unwilling to move into a brighter future. You can't admit your faults. That's the whole coming to Jesus moment. And humbling yourself before God. And admitting your faults. And then working on a path to a brighter future. Saved a wreck like me. And so, down here, where I still regret that I moved in and never had the opportunity to actually enjoy anything here. And stress testing, somebody hits that, what's the impact? Truly, what's the impact? And does the car bend around the pole, or does the pole give? So you're designing, should the pole break away? Or should the car bend around the pole? What is the safe alternative? The car hits the pole and the pole goes, and then all the electricity automatically shuts off. Truly, it just disconnects. Those are just sensors, and it just turns the power off. And so the pole collapses, so the people in the vehicle can be saved. And so a pole hitting a car, what is the end result? Or does the pole stay so rigid it takes the car and the car wraps around the pole, protecting other people from the pole hitting them? And the car stops, right? Because it wraps around the pole. So you have to figure out, what are you going to do with these scenarios? Where is the trade-off? You can minimize both, but you can't save both. And so the trade-off is figuring out, how do you minimize? They get some, the other people get some. They share in the pain, but both are able to recover fully. So it's something, because if you're on the other side and you're the one hitting the pole, you would appreciate them doing the trade-off. So the person that didn't hit the pole is going to have to suffer a little bit, knowing that they could be the one hitting the pole. Somebody cuts in front of them, cuts them off with a bicycle, darts out into the little kid, darts out into the road, and you swerve to avoid them, and you hit the pole. So this is where self-driving cars, they have to. What happened to us when I was taking my driver's training over the summer with Mr. O'Connor? I was driving down the street like this, and we were coming around the corner, and we went straight, and they noticed the school driving car. It was a kid who graduated from Deerfield High School, and he jumped into the street in front of the car, and he pulled back, and Mr. O'Connor, because there's dual braking, he slammed on the brakes on his side. I wasn't driving, I was in the back seat. But the funny thing is, the former student laughed, and he said, Mr. O'Connor, he's like, yeah, you scared the shit out of me, and almost gave me a heart attack. But the whole point is, that's what happens sometimes. Somebody darts out, and they didn't look. I learned not to chase the ball. Look both ways first. Don't leap. Look before you leap. That's what I was taught. Let the ball go. If the ball gets run over and crushed and destroyed, so be it. You can replace the ball. You, not so much. And so, again, nice little Mark Twain Park here. But what's the future of this? Just because the building's here, everything around it, and even that new building, when Jen moved in, shortly after the building went belly up, the person who built the building went under, the developer, and this group from New York bought the building. It was a new building, and they went through and had the building assessed, and this company that went through the building did strategic improvements. So even afterwards, brand new building, about a year or so old, truly a year or so old, they came through and decided to do strategic redevelopment. Brand new building. It's a year, it was about a year or so old. And they replaced, upgraded the front desk, upgraded the foyer, upgraded stuff in the hallways, some art they added, They upgraded the recreational center upstairs. They bought it and improved it. And they did a meeting with all the tenants. And this building's only a year old. It's finished. And it's only a year or so old. And Jen gets another upgrade on her property. She made a great return when she sold it. She should have never sold it. But that's what I'm talking about with the building. Planning out your refreshes when you're going to upgrade a floor. Truly, not because, the building has to have a plan for itself, and when it's going to refresh things on the outside, when it's going to refresh things on the inside, when it's going to do a whole renovation, yank everything out of the hallway, truly, and replace. When are you going to upgrade the sprinkler systems? Even in these buildings right here, when are you going to upgrade the sprinkler system? What did they do at the MGM, at Bally's in Vegas? When it was the MGM, when they bought it, they ripped out and replaced the fire safety systems in that. But you can come into a building and renovate all the sprinkler systems. You can pull out the pipes and you can upgrade the sprinkler systems. That is a major renovation, improving the safety of the building by upgrading the capacity of the sprinkler systems to handle different types of fires. Upgrading the water flow, securing the water flow. So what happens with 9/11 when a plane ran into one side of the building? It cut and severed all those pipings, right? So don't you have to have redundancy? So another reason the fire continued to burn was because the fire suppression system went down when the plane went in one side and went out the other. It went through the middle of the building. And with it, it took out the fire suppression system. So upgrading the fire suppression system with redundancies, where you don't have just one piping system, you have multiple piping feeds. So you have exterior and interior lines that feed into each floor sprinkler system. So if they sever that line works. So if a building, it blows up in a place and that water line is severed, they still have the feeds in from the other lines. So the suppression system continues to work. But that's what happened with 9/11. And then getting out, because where it went out, it collapsed stairwells and that. And so, again, this happens in earthquakes and everything else. And you have to figure out, okay, well, if we can't get out one way, we're going to have to be able to get out another way. So what happens if you have no ability to access the fire stairwell, the emergency stairwell? If that one goes out, how are you going to do it? Do you zip line down the elevator shaft? You can. Why not? Open the doors and zip line down the elevator shaft. Truly. Why can't you zip line? They have the new things that you hit on the line and it controls your speed descent. You don't have to do anything. It controls. It has a weight and it governs the speed of how fast it goes down the rope. You can hold your hands and everything aside and it just sends you. You don't have to belay and control your descent. It controls you. So it's right in the device that attaches to the rope. All it has to know is your weight. And so it sets up the right tension to allow the wheels to turn at the right pace to give you the right rate of descent based on your weight. So you can zip line right down the elevator shaft. That's one way to get out. But you can also zip line down out the external window with that. As long as the harness goes around here and you hit the zip line and you attach it to the rope and it just goes down. You can just, hands and feet, you don't have to do anything. It controlled descents you. It's all in the device. All you have to do is have a rope that handles the weight. And how many people can be on the same rope at the same time? So you have to have controlled descent, because you can't have people panicking and overdoing the ability for the rope to support. And the rope has to be fire resistant, so it can't burn, and it has to be cut proof, truly. It doesn't want to get, as it moves back and forth, gets, cut. But you can move down the elevator shaft. You can move down the external of the building. They already have it governing the window cleaning units. You can use the window cleaning units as an exit. The ones that go from the roof down the side. And so you can use that to bring people down. That's an external way if the internal ways fail. Right? And you have 4 sides to the building. So there's units, the unit can be moved to the side of the building that's safe. Like in 9/11, it could have, the window unit that went over to the side of the building could have filled up and went down and came back up and picked up people and went back down again. There's 2 sides. So those window cleaning units that are automated can double as an emergency exit unit. So they can external remove people from the building. So think of that. So you have the internal. If the internal goes down, you have the external. If the external's not available, you have the internal, right? You take the internal first before you move to the external. But if the internal goes down, you have the external. You have 4 walls. Even if it's rounded, you technically have 4 areas. So with 9/11, it went through the back and the front, but you still had the 2 sides. And you could have went straight down the 2 sides. And they could have cleared the people off using the window system, the window cleaning system that doubles as an emergency exit system. So it can only hold so many people. But again, you can set it up that way and it goes to the ground and it goes back up to pick up the next load. But again, in those evacuations, what do? Who can survive the longest? Who is in greatest shape? Who can take the most? Truly, when people don't have lung capacity and they're on these floors, they can't suck down a lot of fumes. They'll die very fast. A pregnant woman will die very fast. Why were pregnant women and infants first and then seniors? Because their ability to survive, breathing from smoke inhalation and everything else, they can't handle it. So they move to the front of the line. And so it's ranked on survivability. And those that have the greatest ability to survive are at the back of the line. And it separates family. It's based on survival only. And those that have the greatest ability to survive go to the back. That's a trade-off you make. So when you work in that office with them, and HR knows that, these are willing trade-offs. And you're saying that you're in worse shape and I'll give you grace and you will go before me because I have a greater ability to survive injury and smoke inhalation and burns and so on. I will put you in front of me. But again, people have to sign on to these willing sacrifices and know this and accept this. It only works when people work together. But also with human resources in that, knowing that, how much of a sacrifice or burden are you going to put on any floor? You're going to put a lot of fat and out-of-shape people on the upper floors and have very limited ability to survive? And that means it's going to take a long time. All those people and people in shape, they're going to get fucked because they can't get down the stairs because they had prosthetics or something else. They're in a wheelchair. This matters. This all has got to take into account. You can't just sell somebody a unit on any given floor, even in a hotel. They always have to do the survival calculations. I was doing this with Jen. You have to do the survival calculations, even on a ship where you position people, because that ship that all those kids died in South Korea, they didn't do evacuation awareness or training like in an airline. Here's an emergency exits. If you have a water landing, you do this. If we're crashing, you do this. Over land, When do they do that on a ship? I've been on ships. They didn't do anything about that. I've been on multiple ships. They didn't do any of it. They should. Why can't it change? Why can't it be? So the whole point, but you can't have people truly doing what they want. It's like tailgating. Survivability. You don't know, that person could get hit in that car and has, their spinal cord pieced together, and a hard impact could sever their spinal cord and they die on the spot. So you're playing Russian roulette. I don't tailgate. I don't play Russian roulette with people's lives. I don't know their ability to survive impact. It seems like you know my ability to survive impact, so you play Russian roulette with me. God doesn't play Russian roulette with me. So I don't understand these tailgaters. I would fuck them up like no tomorrow, because they're playing Russian roulette with people's lives, and I would drag them out of the car and I would beat them to death. I would fuck them up. And once that got out, that that you tailgate, you're going to be pulled over, dragged out, and the police are going to do a, what's his name, where they beat them with the billy clubs. I think that's justifiable. In my mind, you don't care about their life. Why should we care about your life? Reciprocity. You care, I care. I can't care for you if you don't care for me. That's called civilization. So you don't know what that person can take. Like when I got in an accident and I didn't hit the old people hit me. 2 old ladies with my mother. I was 15 and a half on my learner's permit, getting on to the Edens. My mom was okay. I made sure first. Then I jump out and ran to the old ladies. They're 2 old ladies. I hit them on the front end by their light, way away from it. I didn't T-bone them like the girl did to me. I maneuvered my car, hitting them, sideswiping at their front, driver's side front light, hitting them with as minimal impact. I hit some of the wall. Some of the wall, to minimize the impact on them. I absorbed some of the impact, and so did my mother, but she was to the right of me, so the blow, more energy went into me, lesson to my mother. My mother got the minimal. I got the maximum. I took the greatest hit, trying to minimize how I negatively impacted these two seniors who basically ran the stop sign, who crossed over the entrance ramp, entering from Deerfield Road, going south. But you don't know that person. And so I don't tailgate. I don't gamble with people's lives. And so you've been doing this for 10 years. I would go back and grab everybody and find them and beat the living fuck out of them. Put them in the hospital. Let them see what it's like to suffer in pain all day, all night, every day. But not one area. I got neuropathy, arthritis, and everything else. They got to suffer in many areas. So break their fucking feet, break their fucking hands, break their fucking neck, and let them live with it in incredible chronic pain every night. Let them feel what it's like. And then they would get the message. Don't fuck with or suffer unbelievably the way it should be. That's a just and righteous system. So they don't know what the other person can take. And if you're a woman and you know the statistics that women are more likely to die in car accidents or have severe injuries in car accidents and have more mental trauma from a car accident than a male, well, the city has majority women voters. I saw you tailgating, I would take you in and beat you. So I would have a zero tolerance for these people. Fucking them up. And I mean fucking them. Hey, you dropped your paper. That white sheet you dropped.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. My friend from Kara, her father runs U.S. Foods. If I was talking to her, I could have you immediately terminate it. I could. I pick up the phone and tell her, hey, one of your drivers did this to me. And what? I'll tell my father, you're fucking fired. That simple. It was before. All I do, pick up the phone and you were terminated. I used to be able to pick up the phone for the prosecutor's office and have you thrown in jail immediately. And that's the God's honest truth. I could pick up the phone, tell the prosecutor who you were, and you would be in jail. It was that simple before. Truly, when I came over, like at Baja, throw that person, throw that, no problem. Lock him up, and they tell him to shut up. Put the cuffs on, throw him in jail. No problem, Mike. It was that easy. So I don't get it. And then you're in a trash truck or a heavy truck. When you hit somebody, it's exponentially worse. That's why with the CDLs, it requires you to have even greater margins, greater distance. And when somebody cuts in front of you, what does the CDL say? You have to slow down and gain that space back again. They screwed up, but you can't threaten them. You have to back off again. And I watched on semis on highways in traffic, and the semi is way back from the car in front of them, numerous car lengths, and we're talking bumper to bumper. And cars keep on cutting in front of them. And what does a semi do? Keep on backing off. He creates new distance. He keeps on going back to his safe margin. those are good drivers. They never violate their safety margin. Just because somebody cut in front of them, they slow down and they back off and get that gapping again. And that's why I don't cut in front of them. But they don't teach these. It's not on the driver's test. So they think, oh, the semi's being nice and he's letting me in. No, he's not. It is a braking distance safe zone that you should not enter. But do they teach that on? It should be on the driver's license test. It should be on the driver's license test. Because I could see being that trucker and being in rush hour and you constantly, and it's like, what the hell is wrong with these people? But they don't teach them about the CDL and spacing. Why is a truck keep this? Why should you not be on the right-hand side of a truck? It needs to go in the left-hand lane to make a right-hand turn. Not enough room at the exit ramp. And it should be marked on the GPS. But people don't know that. So I stay in back of the truck. So I give them their room so they can make a right-hand turn. Knowing they're in the left-hand lane, not because they're going left, because they're going right and don't have enough room. And sometimes it works the other way around where they're in the right-hand lane and have to make a left-hand turn. Because they don't have enough room, and those ramps aren't designed properly for semis. And those need to be marked on Google Maps and that. And it needs to be on the driver's test. As we get more and more logistics, we have to work better together. So we must be appreciative. And it must talk about taxi cabs on a driver's test, a standard driver's test. What to do with an Uber and Lyft driver. What to do with a delivery driver in front of you. And on the other side, they're supposed to know what to do with a pedestrian. So we have communication. Both sides are trained to accommodate each other. So there's mutual understanding and both sides properly accommodate each other, are polite and courteous to each other. But that should be done through the driver's test, through road education and Adams Driving School and that. Which Paul Adams, my football coach, started a driving school. And he taught driving school in high school, and he had his own independent driving school as well outside of high school. So you could take private lessons or go through the school. But again, it's like this Starbucks driving me crazy with the pieces of garbage. I don't go in. They don't want me. The garbage always wins. 2 white pieces of old man trash threatening me. So again, we have to refine our driver's test. And this is not only here, that is global. The refinements I'm talking about is all over the world. Making road safety, improving it everywhere in the world, saving lives everywhere in the world. Making the world a better place for all. How many people think this guy behind here who will threaten me with his car? He didn't, but say he did. What right does he have? Is he a citizen of the world? Every day thinking, how do I make the world greater? Truly. But some reason you say that you have the right, anyone here has the right to violate me. We're all treated the same. And so everybody has the right to disrespect me, threaten my life, belittle me, put me down, do whatever they want negative to me. They all have that right. So God thinks, so what about all the other people that could be saved not having to deal with your pettiness? That you want rights to violate me, making you very petty. I don't look at violating you. I don't want to be violated. And I do the same. I don't violate you, so I shouldn't be violated. And you assaulting me and inciting me means you're violating me. So we need to teach us. How about working crews? That's another thing. I don't see, construction crews on the driving test. What should drivers do when construction crews, like here, there's a main break in the city. What should the driver do when there's a police car coming? I pull over to the right and turn on my flashers. And if I can't pull to the right, I just turn on my flashers. So if I'm sitting at the intersection and turns, I turn on my flashers. But these need to be included in the driver's test, in the road awareness and road safety. So what are you doing when a water main breaks? Like in Arizona, the washes, that has to be done in the driver's test, particularly to Arizona. But if you rent cars in Arizona and then you have to take a safety course that talks to you, how do you handle the monsoons? Because the streets flood and you hydroplane. And then the streets get a lot of sand that wash. After the water goes away, do you know what gets all over the street? Sand. And if you're on a motorcycle or a scooter or a bicycle or even a car, all that sand, because of the water, gets washed into the streets, and the streets become full of sand, and that sand causes the tires not to grip well, and when you stop in a car, you slide forward, and with a motorcycle, same thing. And if you're making corners, the motorcycle, the scooter, the bike comes out from under them on the sand. So the sand is like a little bunch of round pebbles, and it causes the tire to roll, to slide. So, but you have to know these things. What are you doing in a wash? What are you doing here? So these things, when you come into places, they're going to have to teach you proper etiquette. Leaving this video. But we need to improve our road safety and have people take mini tests before they rent a car for certain environments. Like going to Europe, they drive on the opposite side of the street. You have to go through a safety test in what's different.